Hey, what's going on? Wealthy Legacy Journeyers, welcome back. I'm your host, Kendell Liden, and the topics we're going to be discussing in today's episode are really going to be mastering time, team, and profit. We're going to be talking about the three levers of business and beating the time assassins. But we're going to kick it off in today's episode with that three levers of business. So this week I was actually, really mulling on, what is the next step that we're going to build here? What is the next iteration of Ambition X Real Estate as we're building this brokerage so quickly within the first year? What's the next big focus and what does that need to be? And I was just mulling on, what is it that we have built? What is it that we need to build? I've also been reading this week, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. So all of that coming together. I was on a walk one morning and all of a sudden, boom, a light bulb moment went off in my head. And I realized that in business, there are only three main levers that you can truly pull. One, input, a secondary is throughput, and the final is output. Now, what do I mean by those? Well, input is marketing and lead generation, right? So that's the top of the funnel, what's coming in order to generate more business. And then the next part, throughput, is leadership and process. So that really comes down to once we have a lead come in the door, how do we process them through, right? Our whatever our workflow, our campaigns, our funnels, our value ladders in order to ascend them to this certain product type that we want them to take. And then we finally have output. So once we've gotten them to the place where they're ready to say yes, whether that be we've connected with them on a phone call, we put them through a website funnel, whatever it might be, they've said yes to a product. We now have to produce that product and deliver that product to the market. So one of the things that I've become really good at over the last few years, and I think a lot of us, smaller entrepreneurs are, is really good at that output, right? And you get really good at the output. You can produce something, you can deliver, and that's a place where we're really strong. I found myself many times over the years, especially in the businesses that were more successful than others, where I really was able to build a successful skill in strong output. But once I had that framework in my mind, realizing that those are the three levers, looking back, I could immediately say, okay, well, the weak places in the past have been throughput and input. So a lot of times I was JVing with other entrepreneurs in these business deals. They were bringing the deals to the table. They were bringing the leads to the table. Now I could do a part of that throughput process because I was, building the process and then, processing a lead all the way through to a contract or a closed deal or something like that. And then also working on that output portion with the production and the delivery. So kind of half the battle I had figured out, which is what made me successful. But the reason I haven't been able to build up to this point a successful brand was because I struggle with that input and the other half, that throughput process, which is leadership. And then on input, obviously you have marketing and lead generation. So then I take a step back and I go, okay, well, let me just assess where are we at right now with Ambition X Real Estate. Okay, well, who takes care of output, right? So once we have these initial deal flow coming in, once we have the initial leads coming, whatever, who's taking care of giving them whatever it is that they've said yes to and delivering something to them? Well, that's the real estate agents that are part of the brokerage. So, okay, well, we've got 15 agents. We're going to be scaling our way up to 25 agents here over the next month. So that's taken care of. Check. Throughput, leadership and process. Okay, well, we've worked on building a much better sell process. So that's been taken care of. And then we have also a leader in place over that team to continue improving that process over time. Fantastic. Then I step back and I look at the purchase team and the leads team. Two other legs of PSL that we want to build inside of our brokerage. We do have leaders over each of those processes, and they're continuing to optimize and build their processes as we speak. Fantastic. So now I'm at this place where I realize there's not much more that I can hands-on do to build that process. Those leaders are going to continue to build a process. I can back up, I can supplement, I can brainstorm, but letting them build their process, right, and letting them take ownership for that process, building that out for their teams. And that leads me to the final place of the final lever inside of business, which would be input, marketing, and lead generation. So I realized what I need to do is make sure that all of the tasks that I'm focusing on, or at least the majority of my tasks that I'm focusing on from a week to week basis, are in and around marketing. How can we get more bandwidth? How can we get more awareness in the market? How can we generate more leads? How can we bring more business in the door? Now, does that mean I will never circle back to the other levers of business? Absolutely not. I know that once the marketing is there, even inside of the marketing team, we're going to have a throughput and an output, right? But inside of the company as a whole, I'm going to also have to then go back and optimize each of those areas of the business. Which one is struggling the most? How can we work with it? How can we improve it? How can we grow it over time? One of the things that I told my team, though, especially as we're coming to this place of working on the input, is we're going to spend really the next probably 1 to 2 months building out these marketing campaigns, getting in a good rhythm for what it looks like to launch these, and establishing our baseline for what is it that is our immediate results. Now, we're going to try to get those immediate results, obviously, really, really strong to the best of our abilities. We want to get strong conversion rates. We want to get low cost per leads. We want to get the right leads in the door, but that's going to help establish a baseline. And then from there, we can start doing split testing. We can start doing other creative ideas on top of what we're currently doing in order to improve those results over time. So if you're at a place in your business right now where you're struggling, you're feeling stuck, first off, I'd recommend reading Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's an absolutely amazing book. We're going to talk about it a little bit later in today's episode. But also, I would just encourage you to think about this. In your business, there are truly only 3 levers. It's so easy to make it way complicated as far as everything that you can focus on, you can do. But at the end of the day, there's 3 levers: input, throughput, and output. So where are you weakest in your business? And let that be where you're focusing the majority of your time, your energy, and your attention. For us here at Ambition X Real Estate, and if I were to think about it, probably most companies are this. You have to create some initial business, right? But then from there, you have to focus on your output, making sure you're delivering a high quality product, and then you're figuring out on your throughput and your input. You got a guy like Alex Hormozy, one of the gentlemen that I love to follow and consume his content. And one of the things that just yesterday when I was consuming content, and I've heard him say this over and over, and I challenge myself, how can I do this better? Is he says produce so much volume that it would be insane for you to fail. It would be improbable for you to fail by so much doing so much input right into the system that it would be improbable for you to fail. So creating so much content, doing that's for me right now. It's my thought. How can I create more content? How can we do more lead generation? How can we do organic stuff? How can we do paid stuff? How can we push and continue putting our time and our energy and our attention, especially for me, on that front that's going to bring in more input. And the cool part is Nathan is going to balance me on the other side of that, right? Working with these agents, working with the team leads, that as these leads come in the door, continuing to help them optimize their processes so we can turn those leads into contracts, into deals, into closings, which then produces profit for the company, which is kind of the aim of what we're building here, right? Going to switch tracks from there, talk specifically real estate, the Ambition X Real Estate Brokerage. We had our first all-team meeting yesterday, which was fantastic. So it's been a couple weeks since these leaders have, jumped into the driver's seats on their teams. It's been great just to kind of get the ball rolling on a couple little things. Yesterday was the first all-team meeting where we all sat down and had a great conversation around, many aspects of the brokerage, where we're at, where we're going, what we need to work on over the next week. And it was just really exciting. I was actually just talking to somebody about this yesterday, walking away from that meeting, realizing I don't have to build everything anymore. Wow, that was pretty crazy because I've been really kind of in that driver's seat of building a lot of the processes, building a lot of sequential steps in our SOPs of here's how we do a lot of the different things that we're doing. And it's crazy in that team lead meeting just to see them bringing their ideas, them bringing their energy and their excitement about how they want to bring agents in for coaching calls to work through calls with them, or they want to bring agents in to teach them how to purchase. And it was just really exciting. Does that mean that we do not have areas to grow? No, we absolutely have tons of room to grow. We have tons of room to improve, but it was exciting to see that initial, flicker working, where I see this little flame there of these leaders and they're excited and they want to build something awesome with us. And now we can just continue to add fuel to that. How can we support? How can we, uplift? How can we encourage? How can we build together? And that's what's really exciting. Switching over to stocks for just a quick second. The market's been trending up well. I've been excited just to kind of see, this small little uptick in the market, which has been an uptick in my account. Obviously, we're not super exposed there. We've got about $12,000 currently exposed in the market. It's $11,000 and some change. Most of it, we have it sitting cash. And anybody who's following our episodes for an extended amount of time, I'm staying pretty cash heavy right now, especially with where the brokerage is at. I don't want to be too extended in the market because I'm not, prepared to say, hey, I'm not, going to touch that money for 5 years in case it does come down to being needed somewhere. But it's really cool because the day that this episode comes out, I'll be getting another dividend payment from BITO, hoping for about 70 to 95 cents per contract. I have 200 contracts, or I would call that two lots. And so I'm hoping for about $140 to $190 payout total on that dividend just for my cash sitting there. I also have the capital gain on the value of that going up over time. And then at the end of June, so when this comes out, this will be beginning of June. So at the end of this month, we should also be looking at a dividend payment for SPLG. So that'll be really cool. It won't be a huge one. The dividend on that's a lot smaller than BITO, but just generating some cash flow, right? We're moving in the right direction. We've got cash set aside. We've got our emergency fund. We're getting more separation between us and being at zero. We've got cash flow being generated now. All those things were really good. Now, talking about the wealthy legacy journey, things that I'm specifically learning, kind of going back to what I mentioned on the 3 levers of business, I want to go back and talk about buy back your time and what are some of the specific lessons that I learned this week from that book. Well, one of those, I'm about halfway through this week. I actually have it here on my desk, and I absolutely love it. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's not a huge book, but it's super insightful. Like I said, I'm about halfway through it right now, and I'll probably finish that up here in the next week or two, and then have a couple other books that I'm planning to go into. One of the lessons that was taught in the book this week was buyback loop, right? And that goes from you experience some sort of pain, you can then audit your schedule, transfer tasks that you shouldn't be doing over to somebody else, and then fill that time with more productive and fulfilling tasks. From there, that really segues easily into the drip matrix, where he talks about making sure that you're moving towards tasks that fill your tank and generate more revenue from the company. Those two ideas really go hand in hand. A few weeks ago, I had hit that pain point, right? I was frustrated. I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling a little bit lost. I was just like, what are we doing right now? Experienced so much growth. I've put a lot into it. One of those things was, transferring that, filling some more of my time back with being more with the family, right? Filling my time with being with family and investing back into the home and being at lunch, home for lunch a couple days a week and, making sure that I'm leaving at good times every day and I'm not working until crazy late. So I've been slowly making that transition back over, and that's just been really good for the whole family. But then also, like I just mentioned on the marketing side, how can I transfer those aspects that I was originally, in charge of over to my purchase team lead, over to my sell team lead, over to my leads team lead. So that way, and then also Nathan acting as the office manager essentially right now, how can I transfer those tasks away so I can focus on the few tasks that can generate a lot of revenue that also fill my tank? I really enjoy marketing. That's something that can really generate a lot of revenue for the company. So how can I start focusing more of my time, my energy, and my attention there? So, for me, one of the things, we were launching quite a few different ad strategies, and mailers and different things like that, lead generation strategies, I should say, here over the next couple weeks. And then also working on a PSL show and tell, which is essentially going to be a webinar that Nathan and I can host that basically goes out to the agents and says, hey, here's what we're doing here at Ambition X Real Estate inside of PSL, the opportunities that we're creating and what's happening over here. And so it's just a great free class. We can provide some value. We talk about the what, not the how. So then agents are intrigued. They want to learn more. Well, the only way they can learn more is by joining our brokerage. And then we can just get a lot of excitement and hype over the brokerage. And what would be so cool is if we could get to the point where we actually have a waiting list for the brokerage. We can say, hey, we actually, we've closed off any more recruiting at this time, but you are on the waiting list. And as soon as we open the door, we'll let you know. And then we can continue sending those agents more content to where they're just overly hyped. And then by the time they are, we open it up for more recruiting, they're just absolutely ready to come in the door. So we see more momentum kind of on this side. It's been really cool. We have all these agents here who are posting about what they're doing, the results that they're getting, how they're excited. And a few of them have even said they've got agents now asking them, what's going on over there? What's the change that you made? Like, what are you guys doing? I'm interested. Can we talk about this? Can we go to lunch? Can we go to coffee so I can learn more about what you're doing? And so now it's not just our marketing efforts pushing this forward, but also the results that these agents are seeing, their friends, their network are seeing those results, and it's just creating even, like a secondary level on top of what we're already building. That's so exciting. Another one of the things that I read in Buy Back Your Time this week was Dan Martell talking about the 5 time assassins. Now, For me, I don't struggle with all five, but there were two when I was reading through. There was a couple the first time I was reading through, but some of them I definitely feel like I've gotten better about. Two that I saw that I was like, those are probably pretty significant time assassins in my life. First one is the staller, dragging feet on new opportunities. For me, that's easy to do. It's easy for me to overthink, overanalyze, take too much time in order to jump into something rather than just kind of jump and go. On the other hand of that, right, is I forget what the second time assassin is, but essentially it's kind of the other side of that coin of really jumping into things too quickly. And so that that the cool part is that's not really like a struggle for me, is like jumping into things too fast. Oftentimes it's sometimes too slow, but then by the time I get into something, it's really well thought out and how to do it and how to do the process. So having somebody like Nathan who's really good about jumping in, but sometimes we jump in really quickly into something. It's a good balance, right? It's a good balance there on how do we build something well, how do we build something for the long term, but also how do we jump into new things and not wait too long, and just that really good balance that we had there. The other time assassin that I struggle with is the supervisor, that do it myself attitude. Growing up in my house, it was, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. And I've come to find out that that's just not always the case. Case in point, with our team leaders. And even going back to a quote that Dan Martell said, I think it was in chapter 1 of this book, he said, 80% done by somebody else is 100% freaking awesome. And when I read that, I was like, that's so true. So even if these leaders can come in here and they can do it, 70%, 80% as good as I can or Nathan can, that's amazing. But you know what else is even more exciting is when you see a leader step in a certain area, they're able to do 90, maybe even 100 or 110 or 120% what you were able to do, because it's something that lights them up. It's something that they're excited about, and they have the time, the energy, and the bandwidth to solely devote to that team, to that process. And that's been really exciting just to kind of see that begin to play out. I see these team leads coming in, I see them excited, I see them, passionate about this. And so then it's just really coming down to how do we guide them in the right direction to build the right things, to do the right things in order to launch their teams to the greatest level of success possible. One of the other things that's been put on my to-do list, is the Time and Energy Audit. And so that comes from Dan Martell every 15 minutes, just looking at what are you doing throughout your week for 2 weeks, and then going back and grading those. Are these high dollar tasks? Are these low dollar tasks? And did that task fill my tank up, or did it drain my tank out? And so at the end of 2 weeks, you can really sit back and analyze, okay, am I still using my time as effectively as possible? Especially for us, we've experienced so much growth. Am I still doing the right things? That's on my to-do list, but my to-do list is fairly long at this point. So I don't think this will probably happen over the next week, but it is something that I will be getting around to because I do see it as something that would be very constructive. I did it before we even started the brokerage. My schedule was obviously totally different. I figured out what I wanted my schedule to look like. I haven't been able to nail that down to a T, but it has been able to push us really far ahead. Speaking of what we did in order to plan well right out of the gate, looking at the final concept that I read about this week, the replacement ladder, this was a revolutionary concept for me. I understood that I needed to hire a few different times in past businesses, but I didn't know where to start. And I wish I had this book back then, guys. Like I'm telling you, if you haven't read it, you got to read it. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're starting a business, if you have a team, whatever, that replacement ladder, it really helped me to understand where do you start on that process of delegating tasks out. And that's one of the cool things is we actually knew exactly how we were going to delegate tasks out and exactly how we were going to build before we even started the brokerage, because of that concept right there in Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time. Using the replacement ladder, we already had a roadmap for what this was going to look like. And now we're able to plug different people into that process as quickly as possible that are strong leaders, right? Train them up to be even stronger and continue to build something really quickly. And at the end of the year, I do believe that we are going to hit our goals as a brokerage. And there's a part of me that even goes, man, will we hit $1 million in revenue? Maybe. I don't know. We're going to have to see. But I'm starting to get this kind of feel like, man, if we can really get the marketing dialed in and we can get a process built around it, possibly so. That wouldn't have been possible, though, without having a firm foundation, having these principles that we didn't just go into this business blindly, but we built our entire business plan and our 1-year projection, 5-year projection, 10-year projections on top of solid business principles, not just from Dan Martell, but from many other entrepreneurs. Some of those books we'll be covering here over the next few weeks, because I know it's time for me to get back into doing more reading. And then I've also got some new books that I've added to my list that I'm going to be going into and consuming that content as well. One of the last points, though, as we make a final transition to the end of today's episode that I want to make, though, is don't forget, when you watch this episode, it will be the beginning of June. If you have not made a habit of paying yourself first, make sure that you do so. I'm not saying this to be braggadocious, but what I am saying is I've had over $100,000 in the bank before, but because I wasn't paying myself first and I wasn't using that money to go out and create more money, I ended up blowing through all that cash. I used all that money on expenditures and it was all gone, and I went to zero twice. This time around, Libby and I were just looking at it the other day. We're sitting somewhere around like 75,000 between cash and stocks and emergency fund and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't account, any sort of net worth that we have in our, living home, which is actually a fifth wheel minivan, the car, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't count any of that stuff, right? It feels so good to have that buffer. That wouldn't have happened if we hadn't paid ourselves first. Now, we're probably starting to get a little bit cash heavy, but I'm pretty low as far as extra bandwidth that I can donate to any other causes, even if they're wealth building causes. And it is nice to maintain a really healthy buffer, especially as we're here building another company. Do I think it's going to work? Absolutely. But is it always nice to have a little parachute that you can pull on? That is good too. So we've got Hudson, we've got this cash here. I'm comfortable with our position. I'm not looking to make any crazy moves right now outside of, I've been saying this for a few weeks, I need to get that into a high yield savings account, hold me accountable to it, right? But, outside of that, just letting that sit there, kind of see what the next few months hold. And then as I get more time, energy, bandwidth, and the brokerage is starting to produce in the right direction where we're going into the green, then I'll be able to have that kind of mental capacity to go, okay, what's the next step plans for this cash? But that started with the idea of I pay myself first when I get a paycheck. It was a budgeted line item. This is how much is going to get paid towards investments. That was one of the first things that money came out for, and that has totally revolution, getting a hold and knowing exactly where every dollar goes and then paying myself first. Those two principles have been absolutely revolutionary in how I handle my finances. Every dollar I learned from Dave Ramsey, pay yourself first. I think I learned that from Robert Kiyosaki. So for anybody who's a huge Robert Kiyosaki fan, you hate Dave Ramsey, well, half of how I've gotten to this point, thanks to Robert Kiyosaki. But people who are Dave Ramsey fans, not Robert Kiyosaki, well, half of that mindset came from Dave Ramsey. So do with that what you will, but I think that both of those guys are absolutely fantastic mentors. With all that said, guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, please subscribe. Let's say our identity mantra as we close out today's episode. I'll say it first. You guys say it after me. I explore the unknown. I conquer new frontiers. My journey is powerful, and my wake is a wealthy legacy. And just as a reminder, guys, the way we define wealthy here at the Wealthy Legacy Journey is simply the ability to cover your monthly expenses without having to lift a finger. And the way we define legacy is leaving a long-lasting impact on others who come after you as they receive the fruit of your labor, whether that fruit be good or bad. What I want you guys to remember in that is whatever seeds you're planting today, those are the trees that are going to sprout. Those are going to probably be the trees that you continue to cultivate, and that's going to be the fruit that you produce. So I want you to look, are the seeds that you're planting now the fruit that you want to be harvesting in the next 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, right? Because if you plant apple seeds, you're going to get apple trees. For me, I can answer that question confidently, yes. The seeds that I'm planting today are exactly the fruit that I want to receive in 1, 5, 10 years. If the answer to yours is no, then I want you to go out. I want you to find new seeds. I want you to plant the right stuff in your life. So please like, please subscribe, please, comment, whatever. It really helps the algorithm, helps us to boost up. With all that said, guys, this is another episode dedicated to you and your own personal wealthy legacy journey. Go out there, simply take the right next step today, and I cannot wait to hear y'all's success stories. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everybody.